Okay, so we're going to kick this off by going over the API lifecycle. And as we head into this, we're going to be on the other side of it, we're going to be building out two system APIs, one process API that really is going to be utilized to bring the data from both of those together. And we'll be getting into utilizing and looking at state in either Cloud Hub 2 or on-prem server using the object store as well as VM queues or JMS queues. So anyway, I just wanted to review the API lifecycle, and it starts off with the first iteration. As we go through that first iteration, we're going to see that we're building out this specification. It's going to be built out in Design Center. We end up using either RAML or OAS in Design Center. Also, if you're creating a specification for an async API, that would also be designed in API Designer. And in this area, we also have the ability to test out our endpoints. And that is, for terminology's sake, that is known as the API console. So again, in Designer, we're able to test out our endpoints, write our code, our specification, and also use governance at this point and test our code specifications against a set of rules, a rule set that we are able to define either using the out-of-the-box rule sets or to create our own. And once we're happy with the design, we can also test out our endpoints using the mocking service. Now, the mocking service gets the results based on our examples that we have given it in our design. In our specification, we will have some example files. So the mocking service will use those examples to render the results and give us an idea of how this API is going to be operating and running. So we'll simulate that API again by way of the API console. So you see that represented here. And when we're happy with the design, we'll publish it to Exchange. And once it's in Exchange, an API portal is created. Now that's a larger, the entire portal in Exchange once you click into your API. And again, we've got those endpoints also available with the API console in the API portal to test out how this API is going to function. And so in Exchange, we have the ability to get some feedback regarding this API and the specification and how it's working. We can also validate it by running it against, again, those the mocking service and some details there. Now, there is a feature that you're going to see as this goes forward to validate, which is the API notebook. It still is available in Exchange under the page. You can add it under the page documentation and actually show a code snippet or a little recording of how the specification is going to be working. Okay, it was planned to be deprecated or ended an end of life at one point, but they still have it available. So it is still there. The next iteration, once this is completed, is to go into the next iteration where we build out our web service. Now, what we do in that case is we can bring in that specification into Studio, and the API kit router will scaffold out our interface. And this interface will have the endpoints represented in private flows. So there will be flows available for every, a private flow available for every endpoint. And we take and build out what we call the implementation. Now, neither of those are reserved words, but they're recommended words that we use for training for really clarity on what each one is doing. So again, the API kit router, we rename that normally to interface, so you're real clear on what that functionality is. And then we create the implementation. That implementation is what is doing really where you build out your mule flow to build out that backend logic, like directly accessing data from the database, transforming that data, or whatever needs to be done. All of that's done in Studio. Then we test it against a client application, whether it's Advanced REST Client or Postman. And what happens is we're checking to be sure that the application is working as expected. So that's that iteration. The next iteration is going to be where we manage and deploy our application. So we're going to deploy that web service to wherever your deployment is going to reside, wherever that runtime is. For example, it might be Cloud Hub 2, it might be on your servers, it might be Runtime Fabric. Wherever you're deploying your application to, you'll use the Runtime Manager for that deployment. If it's in a pipeline, you're using the Runtime Manager API. So either way, we deploy this to the runtime, and then that's by way of Runtime Manager. In that regards, we're able to see a lot of the behavior of the application, of the worker, if it's Cloud Hub 1, or replica, if it's Cloud Hub 2. And we have a lot of ability to see how that application is behaving. Now we can manage this API by way of API Manager, and we can create and deploy a proxy. We can also create a embedded enforcement using a basic endpoint as well. But when we manage this in API Manager, again, we've got two options, and we're going to do those two options with our two system APIs. One of them is going to have a proxy app. The other one is going to be embedded. So as we move forward in this life cycle, at this point, our endpoints are unsecured. Anyone can access our endpoints. As soon as we deploy it into, say, for example, Cloud Hub 2, that is a endpoint that is now unsecured. So we're going to use API Manager to secure that endpoint. And we can add proxies, or we can add policies to it. There's several out-of-the-box policies that can be utilized here, as well as you can create your own custom policy and have it utilized for your API. But we can secure that through API Manager. And then in turn, we have monitoring and analytics and visualizer. These are all further tools that we can use to check the behavior of the API, keep an eye on it, make sure it's functioning as it should. We also have the ability to set alerts, to be alerted if something is entering into an unfavorable state, or being able to keep an eye on how things are going before anything crashes. It's always good to keep an eye on it. But that's where we have, monitoring, visualizer, alerts in different areas. Okay, so that is the life cycle of the API. So that is where our focus is going to be going forward. So let's go ahead and jump into our next phase here. Looking for something in particular to share with you. There it is. Okay, so here is an idea of what we're going to be doing. Okay. I am going to incorporate the American Flights API, and I'm going to be a little creative here, so bear with me. And I like using that one as an example for various reasons. It's out there. It's got a database associated with it, so that's going to be handy. We're also, so we're gonna put together, we're gonna pretend like we're checking on flight prices because we need to airlift. we need to figure out a flight price for a patient. So we're being a little creative here, okay? So this is gonna be the American API that we're gonna create. So we're gonna do this one, but we also, and this is gonna be the one that's in RAML. Okay, so we're gonna create a system API with to get American flights. And again, like I said, we're being a little creative here. Then we're also going to create this patient record system API. That's going to be an OAS, and it also will interact with a database. So this one's interacting with a database, right? Because we have the American Flights database, and then we also have this database. And the reason I'm doing this, setting us up with multiple databases, is so that we'll be able to put those also out there in the Mule domain And also too, there's in the system or in the process API that I have for patient billing, that one I've shown you a couple times, there's VMQs and object store and several things used in here, which Damien, that is why we're not doing state yet. We're going to build this so that we have it out there. But again, we're going to build it on a fast track. Okay, so we're going to be, like I said, creating this. We won't be doing the Salesforce part, but we are going to be doing the rest of it to set us up to have some assets out here to be working with. And then some of them we actually may even do caching with also by midweek. The databases are set up with credentials, and we want to also cover encrypting those credentials that we did not go through in class, the security part. So I want to also go over that with you too. So that'll be next week as well. Okay, so quickly through some of this, we're going to start with the American flights one. We'll set that up. Then we're going to come back and create the patient one in OAS, but we're not going to hands-on create it. What I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to copy the code and share it with you in code share. But here is the life cycle of an API. This is where I wanted to start. And when we are talking about the life cycle of an API, we start with the design and we start with that specification. Once we're happy with it and we test it with the mocking service using those examples, we publish it to Exchange. Once it's in Exchange, then we're ready to use it as a interface in Studio. So we pull it into Studio. We use the API Kit router and it scaffolds out our flows. Then we need to actually create what I call the backend logic, or that implementation that the interface connects to, and we'll create those flows that interact with that. Okay, so all of this is part of really what I like to call the first few steps of setting up our specification. So Design Center, creating our API specifications, and then from there, once we're satisfied, we can test it out, and we will end up bringing it into Studio. And once in Studio, like I said, it will be scaffolding out our design from our specification, and we will link that over into our back-end logic. And so what I'm going to end up doing is having this part ready for you. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get hands-on. We're going to start in Design Center. So go into Design Center. Okay, and again, like I said, I'm going to move a little bit quick, but if I start moving too fast, you let me know. So the first specification we're going to create is going to be the American flights. Okay. And let me get a code share going here for us too. So we're going to come over here where it says create. Click on create. And we're going to create a new API specification. And this is going to be American Flights API. Now I'm going to add my initials to the end of it because we've got several other, I'm in a environment where I don't want it conflicting with anyone else that's created one in this org. So American Flights API. And again, you don't have to add your initials. I'm doing it for a different reason. So yours is fine. And we're going to go ahead and design it on our own. So click on Create API. All right. And we'll allow that to go through. And let me get Here is a sec. Go. All right, here is a code share code for you. Nothing's there yet, so 1 second, I'll be adding things here. Thank you, RJ. I'm seeing that now too about sharing the screen. All right. So we have the title of our API, and then I'm going to, I'll paste it in mine, and then I'm going to capture all of this for you as well. All right, so give me just a second here. Let me get this ready. And then I will share this with each of you. Here we go. All right. Almost there. There's some things in this code that are not needing to be there yet, so I'm taking out certain pieces of code. All right, and it should complain. That's all right. Okay, so we're going to take this out for right now. We're not doing the traits and securing it just yet. We'll come back to that. All right. All right, coming in the code share is that block of code. Okay, so grab it and put it into your text editor, and it's going to complain there's certain things missing, and that's understood. All right, give me a green check once you've got that. Yep, Harnath, go ahead. Did you have a...
No. Once I logged in, it changed the code URL, and now I'm able to get it.
Okay, good. Okay. So you're good? All right.
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. So now we need to add our elements from Exchange. And what I wanted to point out too also is we talked before about having fragments helps to maintain your data types. So we're going to come out here and get the 2 fragments that are needed for this application, for the specification. So to go get the 2 Exchange modules that we're looking for here, we're going to click on the Exchange icon on the far left. Okay, looks like a little network icon. Click on that. And we're going to click on fragments. Okay. And in here, under your fragments, we're going to type in training. And then we should see the American flight data type. Select that box. The training American flights example, click on that box and click on add to dependencies. Go ahead and click on those. All right. And suddenly we have less errors here. Now it's starting to find those Exchange items. So that part is good. We're going to come up here where it says files. Go ahead and click on files. And now we're going to come into Exchange. I'm sorry. We're going to add a new folder here. We're going to add a new folder. So come up to files and click on plus. And we're going to add a new folder. And it's going to be called examples, all lowercase, examples. Okay, and click on create. Okay. And then in this folder that we just created, we're going to go ahead and add a file. Add a file. And this is where we can, it's still considered a fragment, by the way. Okay, so it's still considered a fragment. And the file type is going to be example. So choose the file type and come down to the word example. And the name of it, let me grab this really quick, is going to be American Flight Example. Okay, the A is capitalized, so American Flight Example. Okay, singular, American Flight Example, and click on Create. All right, so this is a single example of a flight, and I'm going to put that in the code share now. Okay, grab that from the code share and paste it over everything that's listed here. Okay, paste it over everything that's listed there so that you remove what is there and paste it in.
Oh, so this code share is some sort of dynamic notepad.
Yeah,
So could you paste in the original
I can.
back real quick? I'll just grab that real quick and
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. Let me go back there. Okay, there you go. Did everybody get the flight example?
Got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. All right, so we still have a complaint here. We're still getting a notification that we don't have the example file for the post, okay, and for the put. And in those cases, we want to have an example file that does not have the ID identified, okay? And the reason is because the post is going to auto-generate what it needs to be, right? It'll create a new ID. And the put, we're going to define the ID here. So we need to create one more over here. And it's going to look a lot like that American flight example. So we're just going to duplicate the American flight example. Go ahead and click on duplicate. And then we're going to change the name here. Remove that one dash. And it needs to be right after the word flight. Position your cursor right after the word flight and type in no ID. And the ID, both of the letters of the ID are capitalized. Okay, so it should be American Flight No ID. The N is capped, the ID is capped, and we'll click on duplicate. And now, if you look at your code, your root file, you should have no red marks on the right. Okay, if you have no red marks on the right, your specification has no errors. And we can test it. If yours has a red mark, let me know and we'll take a look at it. But otherwise, let's run through. Now, a couple things for terminology, exam relevance, is that you've created your specifications. We brought in our modules from Exchange. If these versions get updated in Exchange, you can go to you could go to the Exchange location and you can change the version here. So version management for your Exchange assets that you brought in is here in Design Center to upgrade to the newest versions if you want to. Okay. So back to our code. Jakes, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, it's just it can't find the examples resource.
Let's take a look at it. No problem. And one thing to check, Jakes, is lowercase e for examples. That's what's in our primary code block. And that is the American flight example. All right, let me make it fuller screen. It's tiny. Okay, examples, American flight example.
It looks right, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks right to me. Let's click open on that American flight example. Ah, okay, you got to paste the code in there. That's why. Yeah, go to the code share. Let me turn it back. Hold on. Let me put it back the way it was.
Oh, maybe I missed.
That's okay. Let's see. Let me grab it. One sec.
Control Y should work.
It didn't, yeah. There you go. I tried going back also, but yeah. Yeah, Control A, Control C would grab it and then remove everything there and then paste it in. Yeah. And likewise, paste it in.
Okay.
Okay, now, good, right, while you're right there, everybody follow along. Hold on, you're going to drive a minute, Jake. What we're going to do with this no ID is line 3, we need to remove that ID. Okay, and the reminder on that is because we're doing a post or a put, we do not want to inject that ID value when we are using that. Yeah, so remove line 3. Yep, you're good. Okay, and it's auto saving for us. Good job. And let's see what else. No ID examples. Why do you not like that one? Let's see. Yep, go into that one again. Okay. It should be fine, even though there's a space on line 3. That should not be a problem. Maybe it needs to save. Yeah, go back to your code now, your root file. Root file, drop down a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to take that out. Yeah. Okay. There should be an object. All right, what happened there? Did we get something on the put?
The name of the file is wrong. American flight example, no ID example.
There you go. Thank you.
Oh, good call. I was looking in the wrong place. Yeah, good. See, this is why coding in pairs is always helpful because we see different things, right? I'm looking at the code. I wasn't even looking at the name of it. There we go. All right. Perfect. Okay, now what we're going to do, I'll go ahead and
Stop sharing.
I'll take the driving back. Yeah. Now what we're going to do is test each of them out. Okay, terminology wise, this is your API console. Okay, on the right-hand side, that's called the API console. Let's test each of them out. And again, when we do the get, if we look at our code block here, we can see some examples here. It tells you the data types that it's using. Okay, so notice what we're seeing here, the data types, the example files, and we can do the try it here. And then we get the send in the request. And you get the example data back. Remember that the mocking service uses the example data. Okay, very important. So we'll check out the next one. Let's go to the, click on the hamburger icon here, go to summary. You can see all of them once again. Let's try the post. Again, you see the data types that are listed, an example of the body going in. We'll do try it. And we can see the body that's going in on that post. Send. Go ahead and click on send. And message flight added, but not really. And why is that post? Hold on a second. That should be using this one. Oh, because I didn't delete my line. Did I take it out of the wrong one? Yes, I did.
No, you.
I took it out of the wrong one. Hold on. I gotta fix mine. I was gonna say, why is my ID showing there? All right. So I want to show you something about data validation with our specification. And let me fix this really quick. There we go. All right. So back to that again. On this post, now it's correct. Let's do try it. Okay, we have a couple of fields out here, and they should be required fields. We've got some of these that are required. And when we look at this in the post, okay, notice the list that is required. Okay, so all of these are required except for, let's see. Yeah, these are all, so everything's required. Okay, so all of these fields are required. So in the try it, I want you to go back to the try it on the post, and I want you to remove a few lines. Okay. Remove a few lines. And now send in that request. And notice the kind of message you get. You already have data validation happening. It is letting you know that you don't have the required fields here. So, you know, we were talking about before managing data, managing that data, managing your data to be consistent and kind of a common data model. Your fragments support that. The specifications also start doing some validation on the incoming data. If you don't have the data that is needed based on your specifications, you're going to get a bad request. Okay, so we can put that back. And then run it again. Okay, and you can see the flight was added, but not really. So again, you know, pointing out to you about the data validation there. Let's go test out our other 3 endpoints. Okay, we'll do the get flights by ID. Click on try it. We'll just put some bogus numbers in here, although it is required. If you didn't add those numbers there and you sent it in, you're going to get an error because that is a required field. Okay, so again, that's actually a URI parameter. Everybody pretty clear on the difference between a URI parameter and a query parameter? Give me a green check if you're pretty solid. Red X if you're not. It's okay if you're not. Green check, a URI parameter versus a query parameter. Okay, good, good. Pretty much everybody's got that one. Okay, all right, so we'll send in this request and we get back our example data. Mine is still not pulling the right. I guess so, because I gave it the, yeah, that is correct. Okay. And then delete, try it. And it's going to do, we're just checking our endpoints real quick. And then finally put, try it. And add something there. And we'll send that in. All right. So if all of yours work correctly, give me a green check, which means we're ready to publish this to Exchange. All is good? Anyone have issues? All right, we're going to go ahead and click publish. Publish this to Exchange. Again, the semantic versioning, we talked about that in class. The semantic versioning is bringing it to a 1.0.1, and we'll go ahead and publish it to Exchange. Okay, lifecycle state, there's 3 lifecycle states. We have stable, where it's ready to be consumed, development, where it's going to be held back and not ready to be consumed. And there's a third one. Do y'all remember the third one? The third life cycle state. Trick question? Ooh, click on Publish to Exchange. I'll show it to you. There is a third life cycle state. Okay, so again, remember the life cycle states. The 2 we have so far. One, it's ready to consume. That's stable. The other one is that it's in development. Okay, if it's in development, we won't even see it in Studio when we try to import it.
Deprecate.
Right. Yes, you're right. That is right.
Is it right?
Yes. Yes, deprecated. Let's go to Exchange. And now you should see your API here. Okay. And let's go ahead and click on it, go into it. And yes, that other lifecycle state is deprecated. Okay, so there are 3 lifecycle states. Development means you're holding it back. It's not ready. Stable, it can be consumed. Deprecated is going to be phasing out. All right. Now you would want to document your API and details. We're not going to do that now, but you would want to document some details about this and add your endpoints, things like that. And of course, you know, your endpoints are over here, but I want to draw your attention to this area down below. On the left-hand side, we've got our API instances. I want you to click on that. Right now, there's only one instance of this API, and it's using the mocking service. Okay, when we manage this API, this will change, and you'll have an actual instance number for this API. Okay, let's jump back over into Design Center and create another API. Okay, this one's going to be the patient one. And like I said, it's a one that's already in existence with a database and everything. So we're going to use this one, and we're going to use OAS because I want you to see OAS here. So click on Create, New API Specification. This time is going to be OAS. What version did I use? OAS 3. And it is going to be, ooh, I don't know if I use YAML or JSON on this. We will find out if it's going to work. I think that this is, one second, let me look at this. Yeah, I think it's YAML. OAS 3 YAML. If not, we might have to go back through it. The name of this one is going to be Patient Record API. Patient Records, do plural, Records API, and I'm going to put my initials next to it again. OAS 3 YAML, and we'll click on Create API. Okay, and coming to you in the code share is the entire block. One second. All right. And one second, let me take off the title. You want to leave your title your own. Okay, so just paste this in. And remove where it says paths. Okay, remove where it says paths. And then you can come up here and change the name of the contact and put your information there. Okay, so remember that OAS does not support fragments at this time. They are working on it, but it does not support fragments at this time. And all of the data and the examples that the mocking service uses is now built into the code. And if we go all the way to the bottom of this code block, you're going to see the schema. Patient schema, there's examples here. Okay, so we have all of the patient information here and the schema that is associated with it. Okay, so we can do the get. Once that's in, you shouldn't have any checks or shouldn't have any red marks over here. We'll click on get. And if we come down, we can see the example data. Okay, the ID number and some of the fields with their examples. It's a little bit different of a layout in OAS. We'll try it, send in the request, and we should get back that data. So same thing as we had before, very similar. Okay, and we won't check each endpoint. It's fine. We're going to go ahead and click on publish. Okay, click on publish. And this one is publishing to Exchange. Go ahead and click on publish to Exchange.
You didn't want to change it to 101?
No, and I wonder why now that other one went to 101. It should have been 100, which is kind of
Probably it
odd.
was showing as 100. I manually or deliberately changed it to 101, but
Oh, really? Mine came up as 101. I wonder why. And I don't think I have anything out there that would conflict with that. Anyway, yeah, 100 is really what it should begin with. So if we look at Exchange, now we've got two of our APIs here. Click on the patient records API, and it's going to behave the same way on our GET requests, things like that. Also, if we look at our API instances, same thing. We've got a mocking service here. And it currently is private. Okay. We can make it public and share it with the world by clicking on the share here. Okay, by clicking on the share. And when you go to public, click on V1 for this, you can now make it available in the public portal. Okay, so we just chose patient records to make it public. If you come back to your assets list and come down, you can see the public portal. The public portal. And this is the account's public portal. So it's only going to show what you've chosen to share with it publicly. No, you don't have to make it public. Nope. Nope. Just reviewing that for you. So you can, have what you want shared out there or not. Now, if I want to retract it from being public, then I can come back in here with the share, go to public and unselect that and save it. And I just pulled it back. Okay. So it does not have to be available publicly there. All right. So we have our APIs created. We have these ready. Now, our next part that we want to do is we're going to go and the next phase of the life cycle is to use it in Studio. So let's go ahead and go into Studio. And we have, give me a check once you're into Studio. We're going to go ahead and close down these other projects just so that they're kind of out of the way and we won't have any conflicts here. Okay. And what we're after is to start a new application. Yep, keep the checks coming so I know when you have that. All right, and yeah, here we go. 1 second. Okay. So, I'm bringing up my cheat sheet here too. So we'll click on File, we'll click on New and Mule Project. Okay. And the first one we'll do is going to be the patient. We'll do patient dash records dash an identifier for you. Let's do initials and the date. Okay. And then it's going to be a system API. Okay. And really, technically, this one will be our dev version. Best practices would not have our identifier here so much. We would actually have dev there, but we're going to uniquely identify this so that we are not having other any conflicts out there, because we're going to first put this into Cloud Hub. Okay. All right, now we can go ahead and bring in our specification here when we're just starting off with the project. And so we're going to go ahead and click on import a published, well, it's already selected, import a published API. We're going to click on the green plus, and we're going to bring this in from Exchange. We just published it to Exchange, didn't we? So we type in patients. It should find patient records. Yeah, let me take the S off there. Patient records API with your initials. Okay, you should find it. It's out there. And we're going to go ahead and click on add. And click on finish. Okay. So this is bringing in our specification. It's going to create for us what we're going to call our interface. Okay, now that you may call it something different at your organization, but just for educational purposes, we call it the interface once it comes in. But let's go ahead and click on finish. So our application structure is being scaffolded, or is being designed right now, and then our API is going to be scaffolded with the API kit, and it will make our routes. So bottom right, if you watch what's happening in Studio, also you should see some notifications here as it's scaffolding it. It's thinking. And this is so this is the next phase of the life cycle of the API, where we are using the specification. Again, if that had been set to development, we would have not even seen it. Okay. We would have not even seen that API. All right, so we have our patient records API. Some people leave this, with an API name. We're going to rename it just for the sake of educational purposes. So to rename it, I want you to right-click it. I want you to refactor and then rename. And we're going to call it interface. Okay, interface, and click OK. All right, and go back to click that interface, and from our specification, our OAS, this was the Swagger one, we can scroll down and, well, first of all, we have the listener already created here, the API kit router that will route according to whatever endpoint's been sent in, and then we have error handling pre-built. Comes with the API kit router for different requests, different types of errors that it will catch. Okay. And it's going to, again, catch these individual types of errors as we go down. Then you have the API kit console. And this API kit console will also give you a way to test out your endpoints. Even when you run it here in Studio, it's going to launch a web browser page. And then here are the different endpoints. We've got patient by API, patient, patients. Each one of those endpoints are here. Okay, we have each one of them here. All right, so that part is good to go at this point. Okay, and then we can start building out the implementation that goes with this. So we can right click on source main mule, right click on that, go to new, and come down to mule configuration file. Okay. We'll create a new configuration file, and this one's going to be called implementation. All right, and this again is just for the sake, you know, what was normally done is, you know, following the best practices or whatever naming convention you have. Usually this would reflect more of what this application would do, like getting patient records or management of patient records or something like that, however you would want to normally do that. All right, next on our list is getting the global elements set up in here. We've got a couple of them. So we're going to also create a global XML file. Okay, click on source main mule, right click, come down to refactor and rename. I'm sorry, what am I doing? New mule configuration file. We already did that. This is called global. Okay, and we'll click on finish. And now we've got a global XML file, and we're going to come in here with global elements. All right, and we're going to be adding some global elements here. Okay. Let me see if I can. Copy. I'm trying an experiment over here. 1 second. Yeah, it's not going to do it. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to create each of them. And that's okay. We'll do it. Okay, so in here, we want to set this up for different environments, number one. And we also want to set up our configurations in this global XML file so that we are, you know, kind of working with the different environments. Okay. Yes, sounds good. Sandra and I will email that out if she has. Yeah, she already dropped. Okay. So inside here, we're going to start building out our global. And so we're going to click on create. And I will be giving you all of the details we need here. We're going to do an HTTP listener first. Okay, HTTP listener. And the one thing you want to change is right here under the port number where it says port 8081. We're not going to hard code that in. We're going to do $ curly bracket http.port and close that curly bracket. Now it's very significant that we're using this property placeholder for the port number. Okay, because if we wanted to override this, this allows us from the runtime manager or even from a pipeline to override that. So let's click on OK. That's all we were doing there. Okay, and then we want to add a global property. So we're going to click on create. And we're going to add a global property. It's under global configuration. And there is a global property here for the environment variable. Okay. So in here, we're going to type in env for environment. And then we're going to start off using the value for dev environment. So the name of it is env. The value of it is dev. And click on OK. Because what we're setting up here now is we're setting up our application so that we will have a configuration file for each environment. Okay, so we're setting up the environment, global property. We're going to set up the configuration properties file generic name. So it's going to be config dash $ curly bracket env. And then we're going to set up these configuration files under our source main resources. Okay, so this is what we're doing. Okay, so this is how the mechanism and the objective of how do you manage your values between different environments. That's what we're setting up. So let's click on create. And we're going to click on, this time it's going to be configuration properties. It's under global configurations, configuration properties. And now it's looking for our actual configuration files that are not there yet, but that's okay because we're going to type this in and give it the value that it's going to be, but use the property placeholder for environment. So it's going to be config dash $ curly bracket env curly bracket dot YAML. Okay. Config dash $. Here, I'll put this in the chat. Okay. And let's go ahead and say okay. Well, now we need to configure these files over here. So over here under source main resources, so we're done with global for right now. Let's go ahead and save it. And then under source main resources, you're going to right click and we're going to create a new file. Okay, come all the way down, new file. And now we need to create each environment. Now, in our case, we only have 2 environments that we're deploying to because we want to deploy first to dev, and then we're going to deploy to production. We're going to promote it into production and change this environment value when we do that later. So we're going to call this config dash dev dot YAML. Config dash dev dot YAML. Again, I'll throw that in the chat for you if you'd like, and we'll go ahead and click on finish. Okay, so the first one's there. And let's create another one. Let's do the production one. Right click on it. Go to new. Come down to file. And go ahead and just change where it says dev over to prod. And click finish. Okay, now there's nothing here yet. Let me go grab it because I'm not gonna have you type all that. So hold on a second. All right, coming in the code share is, there you go. That is the value of the config.dev. Okay, and we can also put that in prod, but I want you to, in your mind, pretend that the username and password for this database is unique for each environment. Okay, so I want you to pretend that for me, will you? And we'll save this. Okay, save all. All right, so let's go back over to our global configuration, our global tab. And now let's open up that HTTP listener, because everything we have done with the env variable and then setting the config dash $ env.yaml, that told our application to point to the certain file for that env value. We want to make sure that all of these mechanisms are working. So the port that has http.port, and pay close attention to that syntax so that you make sure that if you have a question on the exam regarding the syntax, that is going to be an easy answer for you. And let's test this connection. Okay, test the connection. When we get a success on this, unless our server's running, is our server running? I think our server's running. We might have a conflict. because
Server
of-
is running.
Yeah, it's going to have a conflict. Let's go turn our server off. That is probably going to fail. Yeah, I bet you it will. Yep. It's already in use. Well, what we could do is we could change our port number here in our config file, but I want to use that port number out there on Cloud Hub. So let's go ahead and stop our server. I think it is. Yeah, that one's running. Okay. Go ahead and stop the servers and we'll play around with this here. All right. And then I should have one more. Where's that guy? All right. Okay. So now that they have released that port, so keep that in mind, your port is that port, it was dedicated to our server. Okay. Allow. And you should have gotten a successful test on that. Okay. And once you have, click OK. And then we're going to go back to our implementation. We're going to go to the implementation here. And for our implementation, we are going to create just 2 flows. Now, yesterday when we tried this, I would have to have it already in here. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do it really quick. It's no issue. All right, so in here, we are going to add a module in the upper right in our palette, add a module, and let's bring our database module over. Okay, so bring our database module over. Once you've got your operations on the right, let's grab this select and bring the select over into your canvas. And I'll give you a lot of these details as far as this is concerned also. And coming to you in the chat, this is the query text. This one isn't very long, so you're going to grab this one. Both of these are actually
But,
pretty easy.
we didn't create any connector configuration for the database, right?
That is correct. We did not yet. Yep. So we won't do that just yet because we want to create it here. So let's go ahead and put our query text here. And we can label this also because this first flow is going to be all patients. Okay. And save it for right now. Let's go ahead and select the flow itself. Okay, let's select the flow and let's call this all patients also, or get all patients, get all patients. And save that. Okay. And let's go back to the flow. We're going to add a transform message next. Bring a transform message over. And I'm going to give you the code block for the transform message. See if we can get by without adding the metadata for right now. Let us see if this works. Oh, sorry. Code share. All right, here comes the block of code here for that. There you go. I know we're cutting a lot of shortcuts, but we're moving a little fast in here. And yeah, we're probably going to have to add some things to this. So that is fine. We'll do that. And let's say here that we're doing. Yep.
I think if you scroll up to your transfer message, you might have deleted the import, the DW2.0.
Oh, yep. I sure did. Yep.
Yeah, this one in the chat.
And that will make it happy. Mm-hmm. Yep. For telling the version of data weave. Yep. Perfect. Yep. But I think it's still going to want us to, yeah, we need to, it's looking for our definition of items here. So we may have to do that. I'm trying to copy over as much as we can to speed us up a little bit. Then let's bring our logger over. And for our logger, this logger is going to be payload. So we can add for the display name payload. And also click on our function key here and payload. Not that you would ever put patient data in your logs, but we're going to do it as a means of double checking our payload here. But realistically, you would not do that. Let's fix a few things here. Let's go to our global tab and do, like you said, our configuration for our connector. So go to the global tab. Okay. And in this global tab, we're going to click on create. Click on create. And we are going to go under the connector configuration, and you should see database config. Say OK. And it is going to be a MySQL database, MySQL connection. And let's go ahead and add our driver. Okay, configure the driver. And add Maven dependency. And that version is fine. We're going to click on finish. It'll add it to our POM file. So we would see that dependency added in our POM file. And then I'm going to give you the property placeholder for each of these for the host coming in the chat. I'll give them one at a time. And remember the syntax here. Do not click on the function key. Okay, it takes the property placeholders just as they are. There is the port. And user. Password. And I didn't get my user in there. 1 second. Double check your password. Make sure that it did come through correctly for you. And then the last one will be the database. All right. All right. And say, there we go. Get that one in there. And we should be able to test this connection. Okay. Click on test connection. We should have access to that database. As long as the password has not changed. I do not think it has changed. And yep. Okay. And give me a check if yours came back successful. Okay, good. Anyone have any issues? Let me know. And we'll go ahead and click on OK here. And click on OK here. We're going to save all in the upper right. Okay, and go back to our implementation. All right, a couple things here I want to point out to you. If we click on our database, let's go ahead and select that database we just configured. Okay, and then hit save. All right, so one of the greatest features that we have that we can have the ability to use is data sense. And DataSense will identify just by this connector what is going to be in our output. So look at your output in DataSense. Like if I didn't know at all what this endpoint, what this database had in it, like what the key names were, I could use DataSense. And I have actually done this on projects, because your database admin may give you a list of the key names, but maybe they're different actually on the database, and that's happened. And so by using DataSense, once I'm connected, I can see the values of those key names here. Okay. And then in our transform message, we'll be transforming. And the problem here, now look at our input, right? We have our input here, but what we don't have is our output metadata defined. And that's why it's complaining. It's like, what did you do here? I don't even know what you have. So what we need to do is we need to give it we need to define this metadata. And I'm getting them for you now. So let's see, how are we on time? Yeah, we'll be okay. Here we go. And we need the patients JSON. That should be it.
Do you know if all connectors have data? I know, well, a lot of them, like NetSuite, Salesforce. If I were to put that on the other side of the transform and have it configured, then that metadata should or it will pop up. Is that for all connectors?
Most that I have worked with do. Even a request. You can look at a request and see what the data is in most cases. So I'd say, and more than likely, yes, Damien. I'd be surprised if you didn't see something, or at least something about that data. Because even if it only defines it as like on our input, for example, look at the input. The input is a payload, it's undefined. So sometimes you'll get nothing. But if I throw a listener in here, now it's going to sense and update it on the input for here. And now we're seeing even the attributes. So even if there's not anything really defined, you should get something, based on what is coming through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, but I don't know about all connectors in particular. I'd have to look at that and see which ones in particular you're looking for. I know for sure Salesforce does. Salesforce gives you a ton of information. You can find out there's all kind of objects in there. I mean, and I think the process API that I'm going to give you as a jar file is going to have, I chose this one for us to walk through just as a refresher on everything that we need for our implementation and linking it. But on the process API, I'm just going to give you the jar file. And that one will have the Salesforce one on it, so you can see all of those. Alrighty, so in the chat, go ahead and download that JSON. That is our output, I believe. Let me open it up and make sure. Goodness. Yeah. Okay. So it is going to be an array. Yes. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to bring that JSON file into our VM or wherever you're working. Let me bring mine in here. Should be able to put it on my desktop. Let's see if this is going to behave. Come on. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. That was lovely. Okay, so if you're on a VM, basically what you would do is just copy it where it sits outside and paste it inside. Doesn't that look pretty? That looks like a great vineyard, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm seeing different backgrounds on account of being on a VM is kind of a nice change. Okay, so let's go to the transform message. we need to define our output metadata. Okay, define our output metadata. So in order to do that, we're going to click on add and we're going to name it something. Okay, so this is going to be patients underscore in JSON, patients records, should be singular, patient records, and it's in JSON. So we can add underscore JSON here. Okay, so we're telling it, I'm just naming it. That's just the name of it. Okay. And it's going to pop up our configuration on the right where we can go get that JSON file that we just are going to use. Here we go. And in this area here, the type is going to be JSON because it is a JSON type file. And then instead of schema here, we're going to use example. Okay, so we're telling it it's going to be JSON. It is an example type of file because it's got examples in it. Okay, remember? And we're going to navigate to where that file is. Now I dropped mine on my desktop. Wherever you put it, grab that file and click open. And then it should populate. Now this is what we want our data field names to be. Okay, so on the database, it's coming out differently, of course, straight off the database. But here we're defining what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to say. And we'll click on select. Okay, it's populating it in. I just noticed some of our key names are going to be different. That's interesting. Okay, change this block of code I gave you to payload. Just change it to payload. And we're going to map this ourselves. Because for some reason, my output code on that is not exactly this. But that's okay, because we're going to go ahead and remap it, which is pretty cool to see, because when we go to mapping this, click on the ID at the top and map over to the patient ID. It'll auto-generate the code for us. Okay. F name for first name and all the way down. Keep mapping them over and it's auto-populating your DataWeave code.
Was there a way to automatically detect these mappings if I don't remember?
Automatically detect them? No, not that I'm aware of. Ethan, are you on? I don't think there's a way to automatically map, is there?
I never heard of anything like that. If anyone does, please let me know. That'd be great.
Okay, maybe I'm confusing with.
You're
different
talking
tool.
about DataWeave auto mapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, but trying to
Is
remember.
it in the code builder or somewhere, or is it here? I don't know. Yeah, I remember seeing it somewhere. It automatically detects the names and maps.
Yeah, for basic, for just one-to-one like that, it'll try to do that.
That's cool.
Oh, it was so long ago and it never really worked right. But
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was an automatic feature. No, I take it back. I think you have to manually drag these.
Okay.
I gotta think back.
Yeah. Hey, city and state are not on there. On the database. I think we had a newer one that we planned on releasing that had city and state, because we were going to do, couldn't we do a data weave? Although the city might not be accurate. I think the original plan was to take the postal code there, Ethan. And Ethan, by the way, this is our Integration Quest curriculum that I'm using here. And that way it's recorded, folks. That's why I'm doing that, because I really can't, out of a class, I can't record or promote Salesforce material. So that's why I'm using Integration Quest stuff. But we at one time we're thinking about using the postal code to retrieve the city and state and append it here. So be thinking of that. I hadn't incorporated it in here. but that'd be cool to do it from the zip. But the downside about the zip code is, or postal code is, you might have different city names in a postal code,
Yeah.
you know, which was like, that's really not going to work.
Yeah,
But
the boundaries aren't always that well defined.
yeah, the state would work. It'd work for state, but it wouldn't for city.
Yeah.
So anyway, food for thought.
Ian, I have a hard stop at 1:30. So
Okay.
continuing and recording.
I will send you the recording, yes. And I'm going to go ahead. I do also have a hard stop. So let's go ahead and save this and see that this has satisfied any of the errors, and we should be good. So we'll pause here. We'll pause here. We'll pick up on here. We're very close to having this completed, because basically we're going to copy this and then create that second flow and tie them together. So we'll do that on Tuesday. And then I'll have our other jar file, also the flights jar file, ready. And then we should be able to zip through and get them in use and secure them. And I'm going over client ID and client secret, all of those details there. And then in the process API that we're going to throw in there as well, it will be the one we use for state. Okay. So we'll have the 2 system APIs, a process API, and all kind of fun stuff to work on next week. So